All right, well, hopefully you watched the emotional competence training video. Let's talk a little bit about the effectiveness of emotional competence training. So, just to paraphrase the concept, it's your ability to understand, express, and manage your feelings. So, your ability to understand your own feelings, your ability to accurately express your own feelings, and your ability to manage your own feelings. There's also in emotional competence, there is the ability to understand other people's feelings, and your ability to manage your feelings in response to theirs. So there's a give and take component to emotional competence as well. So, emotional competence training is linked to general well being and to work performance and academic performance. So, there is, well, and actually not training, emotional competence is linked to general well being, to work performance, and to academic performance. There is a big question about whether people can be trained to be more emotionally competent than they maybe naturally are. The research I'm describing here in the purple square is not assessing the effectiveness of emotional competence training. It's just sort of comparing people who are higher in emotional competence to people who are lower in it. So there are good outcomes for having emotional competence. Training can improve employee subjective well-being and physical well-being. So people who've gone through emotional competence training tend to report that they feel better psychologically and physically. They tend to report that they are not feeling as tense, that they feel more confident, that they feel understood, some of these subjective things. In one study, they found decreases in perceived and objective stress. So the person said, I feel less stress. And then the physical measurements like blood pressure and things like that also indicated that they were under less stress. They had a decrease in physical complaints. They were less likely to say, my back hurts, or other kinds of things. And they also experienced improved social relationships. So they were getting along better with their friends and family, their coworkers, and things like that. So it seems to have some pretty widespread potential for improving a person's experience. Are they more emotionally competent? I'm not sure, but they maybe are feeling, they might be feeling better. Social support can also be helpful. Maybe you don't need some formal emotional competence training. Maybe you just need employees to feel like they are being supported when they're under stress or when they feel overwhelmed or they're experiencing burnout or something like that. Maybe it doesn't have to be emotional competence training, is my point. So now we had a theorist named War who made a list of environmental determinants of well-being. And so you have the opportunity for personal control at the very top. This is why I love DC and Ryan's self-determination theory so much, because opportunity for personal control is at the top of a lot of people's lists of well-being, satisfaction, stuff like that. Next on the list is opportunity for skill use, variety on the job, environmental clarity, valued social position, externally generated goals, so somebody else is generating the goals, availability of money, physical security, supportive supervision, and opportunity for interpersonal contact. The more determinants that are present in a workplace, the less likely the employee is to experience negative well-being, which is kind of a cumbersome way of saying that they will experience more positive well-being, but oftentimes in the measurements, they just don't mark the things that indicate they're having the negative side of it. So the more of these things that are present, the better the employee probably is going to feel. It does. So links to some of the different IO theories. Job characteristic theories kind of span the first 5 things on these environmental determinants. Intrinsic motivation and reinforcement theories kind of encompass the next 2. And then physical security, you absolutely know that links up to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the ERG theory. I thought I had more words that were going to come in. The supportive supervision, I kind of was hesitating over whether that's a little bit of like belongingness needs being met. And so maybe it fits with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The ability, the opportunity for interpersonal contact, that again feels a little like the belongingness needs. So I might argue that the physical security and below all relate to Maslow and the ERG model. Okay, so this is a conceptual model of work-family interface. I've actually done years of research on work-life balance, and this is a really important issue in the modern workplace. A lot of employees are recognizing that having a healthy work-life balance is even more important than the amount of money that they earn. So this is super important. Now, back in 1997, Frown, Yardley, and Markle were really interested in what they called work and family. And so I think today we would just say life. But the work-family conflict term refers to those times that work is, oops, I thought I had a label. So, oh no, everything's coming down. Oh no. Work is interfering with family. And work-family enrichment refers to those ways in which work is like enhancing the family. So personal and family variables and work variables feed into the work-family conflict. And when we have work-family conflict present, we have less job satisfaction and less life satisfaction. I'm dissatisfied with the number of chat requests that are popping up here. How do I turn, no, yeah. Okay. So work-family conflict, not good. The spillover model refers to the tendency for work to spill over into family life or family to spill over into work life. When we have good work-family enrichment, where what's happening at work is enriching our family and what's happening in our family is enriching our work, when that's happening in a good way, we get a spillover of positivity, where we have better physical health, better mental health, more job satisfaction, more family satisfaction, like everything's benefiting when there's a good synergy between the work and the family. And we have these negative things, reduced problem drinking, reduced depression that are associated with work-family enrichment. So obviously, it's in the organization's best interest to have employees whose work is enriching their family life and that their family life is able to enrich their work life. And so we have better well-being related outcomes when there's enrichment, poorer work-related outcomes when there is conflict. It turns out that for women at any age, any stage of their career, work-family conflict is related to career satisfaction in women their whole careers. So the lower the work-family conflict, the less the woman perceives that their work is in conflict with their family, the more satisfied those women will be in the workplace. It doesn't really become a balance for men, at least in the research, until they're a little bit older. And I'm not talking about 60, I'm talking more like 40. Men who are more middle-aged are more affected by work-family conflict than younger men are, on average. And then my last little comment here is that people who identify and set goals and develop and refine their strategies and are flexible perceive less job work stress. And so some of this isn't just a nature of the job kind of situation. Some of it is the way that the employee is working within the job. So if you have a person who's within the organization setting their own goals, refining their strategies, and are flexible about, what's happening. Yeah, it's possible I'm going to have to leave early because my child got sick and I got called from the office at school. I have to go pick them up. But it's also, I understand that I need to make up this work. And so I can either take my company laptop home and get some work done this evening, or I can stay late tomorrow. Like, that's the kind of flexibility that reduces work-family conflict, like being open and willing to, refine and develop as we go. All right. So it's in the organization's best interest to help support the work-life balance. A lot of organizations now recognize that, and they're taking steps to help support people in their work-life endeavors so they can have that enrichment effect. So what we're seeing here is we've got flex time on the left of each of these two panels. And so flex time is where a person can kind of set their hours differently. I mean, historically, the old phrase was you would work 9 to 5. So I guess you got a paid lunch. Then it started becoming 8 to 5 and you weren't getting a paid lunch. But everybody was sort of there at the same time. Now what organizations are starting to realize is that for a lot of people, having flex time, you can come in at 7 and you leave at 4, or you can work through lunch, or you can do other things so that you can have a little bit more control over your own schedule, is beneficial for a lot of people. So on the left panel in the top row blue bar, you see that for white men, flex time policy is negatively related with like satisfaction. So that doesn't work for white men. But for white women, for black men, for black women, Hispanic men, Hispanic women, Asian men, Asian women, so like everybody else likes the flex time. For white men, the 12 weeks of parental leave doesn't seem very attractive either because they're also below the bar on that one. Whereas for white women, black women, Hispanic men, Asian men, all of them had better satisfaction when they had 12 weeks of parental leave. So you see that some bars are missing entirely, so it didn't affect the happiness or satisfaction of those employees. If it's below the bar, it actually was negatively related with their satisfaction. And if it's above the bar, then it was positively. So if you kind of look around by like where the biggest bars are on the positive side, you see that, like, for example, for black men, black women, and Hispanic women, vouchers for childcare are the best, like most common, I should say, most common thing that they say was associated with increased satisfaction, a good work-life balance. So you can kind of look around and see that people have different things that they value and different things that would help them to have a good work-life balance. So different kinds of things being depicted by different groups and based on sex and race and other kinds of things. We do know that organizational support and supervisory support for family life are related to key stress and strain variables. So when the organization values the fact that you do have a life outside of this organization and your supervisor empowers you to do the things that are necessary to balance work and life, employees are under less stress, and then they experience less strain. And then, of course, the downhill effect is they're less likely to call in sick. They are less likely to find a new job. There's like a lot of benefits for the organization to having those supports. All right. Differences in work-life supports based on income level. Okay, this does not look good, so just brace yourself. So middle and high income, when we look at benefits such as paid time for personal illness or days off for sick child without loss of pay, if you're middle and high income, you're much more likely to have either of these things than if you are low income. And so like the very people who need this the most are the least likely to have it, right? So paid time for personal illness, like easily twice as common, 2.5 times as likely that you would have that if you are a middle or high income earner. Days off for a sick child without loss of pay, you're twice as likely to have that benefit if you're a middle or high income earner than if you're a low income earner. So these are kind of problems. If you're a low income earner, you sort of need that. I thought I'd point out this Washington State RCW on days off for a sick child without loss of pay. Oh, I thought I had it here on this page. So let's hop to it real quick. There's actually state law that allows paid sick leave for authorized purposes. And if we scroll through the very easy to read and very well written and engaging, we find that you can have paid time off to take care of a family member, and a family member would be like a child. It could be your spouse, anybody who you're basically responsible for. And so you're in the state of Washington, you have that as a protection. So every employer shall provide each of its employees paid sick leave, and it needs to include to care for somebody that you're responsible for. So I thought I'd share that with you in case you thought that was interesting. All right, this seems like a really good time to stop because we got our family-friendly benefits. We'll start that in our next video.